you're like most sailors, the engine on your sailboat often gets used for much more than just coming in and out of the harbor. Quite often they run for hours on end, taking us to our favorite places when there is no wind or even motor sailing. While motoring, if you happen to hear a clunking or hammering sound, it's possible your prop shaft strut bearing might be worn out. You can easily check the bearing when the boat is out of the water by pushing on the shaft side to side or up and down. If it moves at all, you need a new bearing. Let's take a closer look at the prop shaft. As the shaft passes through the strut, it's supported by a sleeve bearing. Looking closer, we'll find it's a brass sleeve with a hard rubber ribbed insert. The ribs allow the water to flow through, lubricating the bearing. As the rubber ribs wear, the prop shaft is allowed to rattle around, causing a hammering or clunking noise as you motor. To remove the bearing, loosen the set screws and slide the bearing out. Seems simple enough, doesn't it? The traditional way of removing the bearing requires pulling the prop shaft, followed by forcing the bearing out with a gear puller. Pulling the prop shaft can be a difficult job, so we came up with a simple jig that pushes the bearing out of the shaft in place. The idea is to make a sleeve that pushes the bearing out. The jig consists of 4 flat bars, 2 pieces of all-threaded rod, a 4-inch long section of pipe that gets split in half with a hacksaw, bolts, nuts, washers, and 4 springs. Place the split pipe onto the forward side of the shaft. Temporarily secure the 2 pieces of pipe with zip ties. The 2 flat bars in the forward section are placed in front of the pipe and secured firmly against the prop shaft with bolts and nuts. The 2 flat bars in the rear are placed just behind the strut. They're bolted together as well, but have springs between the plates to allow the strut bearing to clear the plates as it gets pushed out. Join the 2 sets of plates together with 2 all-thread rods, nuts, and washers. Now you're ready to remove the bearing. As you tighten the bolts on the all-thread rods, the split pipe begins to push the bearing out. Continue tightening the bolts until the bearing has been completely removed and pushed out. To replace the bearing, loosen the threaded rods. Notice the aft plates are now closer together where they just fit over the prop shaft as the bearing is pressed in place. Once the bearing is fully in place, remove the jig and replace the set screws. Replace the prop and you're ready for some smooth motoring. See you back on the water.